Welcome to the New England Casino and Gambling Podcast, a production of AnytimeGambling.com, your one resource for New England casinos and recreational gambling. This is episode 70, and Michael Trager is back. We talk about Big Baccarat and touch on the future of casinos in the Northeast. Enjoy. Well, we're back with Michael Mason Trager of TravelZork.com. The two of us have a common thread, as many of the listeners, and it's gambling. So what are your favorite casino games?
Without a doubt, my number one favorite casino game is craps. But in addition to craps would be Baccarat. But I would say my number one favorite game is definitely craps.
Baccarat is basically how you've built your reputation in lots of the casinos that you play in. What advice would you give me or anybody else who's never played the game?
Well, do you want real advice or do you want superstition advice?
Oh, well,
because that's the beauty of Baccarat.
I'm going to leave it up to you.
Well, I enjoy the myth of both craps and Baccarat a lot. I also enjoy getting people to believe the myths, but by the math, I mean, most people don't think that Baccarat will be exciting. You know, the big thing with Baccarat is it has to be a squeeze game, which is basically, usually for Baccarat, that's called mini Baccarat. And it's usually a table that's slightly larger than a mini Baccarat table, but the main difference is that the players get to face the cards, which makes it really exciting. Even though you cannot choose to change the rules of the game, because Baccarat has preset draw rules. So basically, you have no control over any of that. It's still really exciting for players to be able to face the card. There's something about the simplicity of it and the camaraderie, because much like craps, many people play the same way, either, all with the player, all with the banker. Mm-hmm. And also this beautiful Zen nature of keeping track of patterns, which have no impact on the outcome of the game.
What is up with the cards and keeping track?
What's up with it in Baccarat is that most people who are Baccarat players have a huge belief in patterns. Huge. Now, of course, you have an 8-deck shoe that has been shuffled or pre-shuffled. Basically, the destiny of this shoe has been determined by the shuffling, because the rules are the rules, right? Whether you're drawing a third card for the bank or drawing a third card for the player, whether you're stopping after a natural, all of those rules are just the rules. So basically, once the cards have been shuffled and they have been put into that shoe, you cannot change the outcome. Whereas in blackjack, you could choose to hit when you're not supposed to hit, right? I mean, right. Mathematically, right. It doesn't really change the odds for people, even though they think that. But truly in Baccarat, that shoe is going to be played. I mean, the pattern of player, banker, tie, player, that is exactly what it's going to be, because nobody can draw an extra card and change the hand.
What we usually see in the casino is mini Baccarat, right?
Yes, and that's when the dealer does all of the facing of the cards. Right. That is very fast and nowhere near as exciting as a squeeze game, because, the whole thing about Baccarat is it's a little bit social and it's a little bit wacky. And just watching players, watching people squeeze out a card. Because literally some of the Asian players, it's like, I'm going to squeeze out a face card right now. Now, of course, this is ridiculous because the two cards are in front of you that are the two cards that are in the 8 decks that were shuffled. There's no way you're changing the card, by squeezing it.
Well, you've also told me that squeeze games, they actually are able to bend the card.
You can bend the cards. You can often rip the cards. You can throw the cards. You can do whatever you want to the card. Well, you could do, etiquette-wise, you could do whatever you want to the cards as long as the cards are completely visible at all times. If you are not on the high end of the betting spectrum, it is frowned upon to rip the cards or mutilate the cards. If you're betting, over $500 a hand, nobody's going to probably give you a hard time. If you do that, mostly from a compliance standpoint.
Do squeeze games basically start around $100 minimum or higher?
It used to be, squeeze games used to be $25. That's when I used to play Big Baccarat, like Bally's in Atlantic City. Then they became $50 and $100. Now it's $100. At places like Wynn in Las Vegas, it's out of sight. I mean, a lot of times you get a squeeze game, you're at the 300 or 500 tables, which totally prices out a lot of people. But once again, this is a supply and demand kind of thing. But years ago, you used to be able to get squeeze games for $25, which was really pretty awesome. Because also remember, Baccarat is a very good comp hustle because unlike blackjack, you do not have to be in the action for every hand. You've got 8 decks, so an average shoe, depending on third card draws, an average shoe is going to be between 65 hands and about 78 hands. So you can sit out easily 20% of the hands and probably not impact your rating, which is really, really good. Whereas at blackjack, you look like a weirdo if you sit out a hand. And you really can't. Blackjack, it's very weird to sit out hands. But in Baccarat, it's actually quite common for people to sit out a hand. You have a low house edge game. Mm-hmm. If you don't play all the hands in a low house edge game, that's even better, right? So, because, just from a comp perspective, remember, this isn't changing the math of the game. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about comps. Most times your comps are based on time, average bet over time.
Right.
So time is assuming that you're in the action and you're betting X number of hands an hour. There's a formula there. So if you bet fewer than those hands per hour, you're going to do better with your comps.
Well, let's switch gears here. Give me an idea of what you think the future of New England's 9 casinos is.
I think Boston is great. I think what Encore has done in Boston with that property is brilliant. I think it is truly, a magical, beautiful 5-star property. It's a huge casino floor. I think there is going to be further expansion there for other things to make it more of a entertainment kind of recreational center. I think the most interesting thing is going to be Connecticut and New York. Because we know that New York, I think the governor of New York just recently agreed to multiple casino licenses.
Yes.
And I think when those, regular, class 3 resort style casinos start popping up, even if we talk about that further expansion, that's going to really impact Connecticut casinos quite a bit. And it's also going to impact Atlantic City. One thing that I really respect about Foxwoods and Mohegan is that overall these are pretty savvy, well-run properties. They're big, they offer a lot, people love to go there. So I don't think they're necessarily going to be decimated by downstate New York casinos, but it will be interesting. Mm-hmm. It might cause the casinos in Connecticut to have to be a little bit more generous with their comps and a little bit more generous with their offers, especially to people who now have the option of going to those New York casinos.
So where do we find you?
Find us on all social media at TravelZork, especially on Twitter. TravelZork also has a ZorkCast Facebook group. Definitely check us out there. There is a chat function on the TravelZork website, and you can feel free to reach us out there. And be sure to listen to ZorkCast, the TravelZork podcast. And thank you again for having me on.
Thank you, Mike.
You can find AnytimeGambling.com on Twitter at AnytimeGambling, on Facebook at the New England Casino Facebook group, or follow me, Robin Aubin. As we say at Anytime Gambling, embrace the math, not the myth. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.